Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at an advanced copy of Ju-87 Stuka Ace, designed by Gottardo Zancani and published by Lock and Load Publishing. This is a World War II solitaire game where you take on the role of an individual Stuka dive bomber pilot in the German Luftwaffe. Now you can fly individual missions, but the heart of the game is a campaign that spans the entire length of World War II, traveling from various theaters and undergoing a ton of different missions. There's a lot of stuff in the box. Let's open it up, take a look at the components, and offer some initial impressions. So before we start, I do want to be a total disclaimer on this one. I am so biased towards absolutely loving this game because if you've seen some of the series and videos on the channel, you know that I'm a big fan of games like The Hunter and Silent Victory. These games where they give you a chance to either command a vessel or a pilot or an individual tank commander throughout the course of a war with this dynamic campaign where you've got role-playing elements to level up the skills of your pilots and vessels and stuff like that. I mean, a huge fan. I think these kind of games just generate incredible narrative, and you can play a mission like 30 minutes and then you come back to it. You never know where you're going to die. You have no idea what's going to happen. And your goal, of course, is, can you make it through the whole war? And there's just tons of gameplay in these things. So totally biased towards liking this one. And after looking through some of the components inside the box, I'm even more excited about it. But let's get started then here. So a 3-inch box. There is a ton of stuff in here. Let's take a look at the back of the box and just do kind of an overview on a couple of things here. Now, the complexity is a 6. I feel like that's a little bit high. I've kind of probably about halfway through the rules now and kind of skimmed through them and read through some other pieces and stuff like that. I mean, there's a good bit here, and when you see the rule book, it's rather large, but it's not super complicated. I feel like more like a 5 maybe, and maybe that's not a big deal, 6 or a 5. But I don't think you want to let the complexity of the game scare you away, because it doesn't feel like a game that's going to require kind of conceptual leaps to kind of understand some of the rules, or a lot of real kind of intricate details to be able to manage. There's going to be a procedure that you're following through, and the rules seem pretty clear in terms of helping you to execute that. Solitaire playability, of course, is a 10, which makes sense because this is designed as a solitaire game, and that's what it is. You're playing this one alone. Time is 30 to 60 minutes. Of course, that's for one mission, and there are tons of missions in the game. I have no idea how long a campaign would be, but I think it's massive. There's a lot of theaters in here, as we shall see. So with that being said, let's jump inside and take a look at what's in the box here. Alrighty, so we'll start out with the manual here, and I will say this is a hefty manual. So when you see that 6, you're saying it's not that hard, and then you look at the manual here, it's 80 pages. But some of these things are like extra campaign logs that you can run copies off, and some promotional materials for other games. And then the entire back here that comes from page 66 here, 64, this is all an example of play, of just kind of leading through a Stuka through one mission. So a lot of those, 20-something pages or so, roughly 20 pages, are kind of an example of play. The print is really big, and I'll show some kind of close-ups on a couple of these pages, and it basically kind of walking through the sequence of play for how you're going to execute a mission, and then how you're going to set up your campaign and get started on your campaign and things like that, and a lot of the different features and attributes of the campaign. So as you can see, there's not a ton of text on each page and a lot of graphics and things like that. It goes really fast. Even like the first 10 pages, they're kind of big pictures and stuff like that, just kind of showing you what stuff is. So I think I got through the first 20-25 pages in about 15-20 minutes or so. So it goes really fast. I don't think this is I don't think it's a super hard game to learn. You definitely don't want to let that 80-page manual kind of instill fear in you. But now we get to the cool part here. Well, not that the manual's not cool, but this is cooler. The theaters. So as you take your Stuka pilot through the course of their campaign, these are the different theaters you can go to, and there are tons of them. Now, Spain here, this is an optional one. So not only does it have like a core campaign, and that's kind of one of, I guess, kind of to step back, that's another comment. As I look at this, I feel like nothing's been left out. Right? So you could have done a campaign starting in Poland, but they added more. And it feels like almost at every place in this game, they've added stuff to bring more kind of flavor and color and kind of embellishment to the campaign and stuff, so that it's not going to be this kind of repeating the same mission over and over and over again. And wait till you see when we get to the Stukas here too, which is pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, so you could have an option for starting in Spain, or you even have an option for starting in China, but The main campaign generally starts in 1939 in Poland. But I'll kind of thumb through these, and you have basically a series of missions that you have to complete. So they have 5 different types of missions, and each theater is different, and there are unique cards for each theater, as we'll take a look at some of the card decks that's going to determine what happens in your flight. So as you go through the game, I feel like each one of these theaters is going to have its own subtleties to targets, its own nuances for weather and types of play, for defenses and things like that. And then, of course, the Stuka evolves over the course of the war too, as we shall see. So I'll just kind of thumb through these because I find it kind of fun to take a look at. France 1940, Britain 1940, Crete 1941, Mediterranean. So you get the idea, right? This is massive. Malta. And I'm about halfway, well, maybe 2/3. North Africa, Soviet Union, 1941, 1942. Sevastopol is I think, one of these extra kind of optional campaigns that you can get spun off to and be that part of your pilot's history as well. Here's another page on that one. North Atlantic Sea, 1942. So it goes on and on. Soviet Union, 1943 and 1944. Then we get Italy. And this one has night missions. So in 1944, you're in Italy, and then we get to the end. So you can see there is just, I mean, it's a massive campaign. And check this out. So these things here, there are 2 of these. These are kind of your pilot cards, basically. Not necessarily, these are your pilot cards in terms of showing like the characteristics of your pilot and things like that. And you start out your campaign as as wingman. You're solely in charge of your own plane. And then as you gain experience and victory points, you're still flying your own plane in each mission, but you also dictate the kind of activities of your Kette leader. So now you're going to be in charge of, I think it's 3 planes here. Then after you get more experience points and you go up even higher, then you become the Staffel leader, which I think, I might have this backwards, forgive me if I do. I think that's 9 planes. And then you go to the entire group leader, so you're dictating kind of, you have just more decisions to decide with the group, and the group performance matters and things like that. And this is 3 Staffels, which I think is about 27 planes plus a couple of odd ones as well. So as you go through your career, your responsibilities are going to get more and more, even though that's still core of that game is you flying your individual plane and trying to bomb targets. All right, so there's that. Now, these are counters. These counters want to play. They're coming out very easily. Most of these, again, we're going to see these are the markers that go on the various record tracks. So one of them here is for this, the pilot record over here too. There's some stamina counters. We can see these little electricity. So as you get more experience, you can increase your stamina, and that gives you kind of decision-making capabilities and more energy to conduct your mission. It's kind of a way, I think, to reflect the experience of the pilot. These are really nice. They're rounded on all corners. I'm going to guess, yep, see a couple of them are coming out. A little bit bigger than a 1/2 inch, so good size to them. What I really like about them, too, is they're printed on both sides, and even the ones that have the same front and the back, if I flip this over here, are also printed on both sides, which is always really a nice touch to see. So quality looks really good. I love the design on these. And again, these are mostly markers that are going to be dropped on the plane as you're trying to track the damage for the plane and things like that, and some of the other components and kind of the cards, really, if you would, that are going to kind of help you manage gameplay. So we'll put that over there, and let's not lose our engine damage marker as well. And now let's take a look at some of the player aids here. All right, so we got a lot of player aids to go through here, but most of them are plain, so they will go relatively quickly. This one here we're looking at is the player aid card. This gives you a lot of the key die roll information that you're going to need for the different stages in a mission. And as you can imagine, each mission, you're going to take off, you're going to approach, you're going to go towards the target, you're going to try to find the target, you're going to make your bombing runs, and you're going to try to get back. So there's a kind of a set procedure that goes through there. Although many missions have multiple sorties, so it's going to involve bombing the target, landing, and then taking off right away and trying to hit it again. So it's not just all kind of one bombing run and then you're back. And of course, as you can imagine, there's lots of ways for things to go sideways. Enemy squadrons, flak, anti-aircraft, weather, all these kinds of things can create problems for your Stuka as you're trying to conduct your mission. Now, on the back side of this, we get, this is again, kind of continuing on this, there's a whole level, a whole sequence and a mechanic for your bomb attack sequence, based on where you're dropping the bomb. If you drop it closer to the target, real low, you've got a much better chance to hit, but there's also a good chance you're not going to be able to pull up and you're going to crash and die. So actually in the rules in one place it says, don't try this early in your career because you won't have the skill to pull it off. So do it higher. kind of thing like that. And so this kind of basically goes through, and there's not only just bomb attacks, you also have strafe attacks and gun attacks. And at certain points in time, I think, and depending on the mission, you're going to be called to do different types of missions as well. So this basically is kind of your support card for a lot of the information that you're going to need in terms of conducting your mission. Now here's the pilot campaign log, and you can see that there's a lot of different elements that you can log up. This records all the missions and how many missions there are in a theater. And then down here we have skills that you can get, there's awards that you can get, and that's going to pull different cards into your skill deck. So this, I feel like, in many of the games that I've played that are of this type of game, this is often one place where I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for embellishment and improvement left on the table. But I feel like in this game, at least from what I can see from what the development's got, they've really fleshed this out. This feels complete with awards and skills. It's thought out. You're going to be able to spend your victory points to increase certain attributes in a lot of different ways. So I think there's a lot of kind of strategy that you can bring to bear in how you're going to develop your pilot over the course of the campaign, which I think is something that often is lightly touched on in many of these games, but I feel like this looks like it's done real well. Until you play it, you don't know 100%, but I feel like this is really exciting to see how much attention has been put into that and the detail there. Here's the sequence of play again, so kind of we've talked through that, but going through takeoff, approaching, return to base, then you got to refuel, then attack, and you could be bombing, strafing, or gunning, and things like that. So this kind of leads you through the various stages that you've got there. And then another one here, these are different things for evasion, dogfighting, fighter battles, pilot experiences. So here's a lot of the different things you can do. You can improve your gunner skills, you can increase your stamina, you can add in specific pilot skills, you can increase the hand size of the number of cards in your skill deck, and you can improve your action deck, which is a different way to do that too. So you can have different actions that you're going to be able to do. And again, I might be a little bit foggy on this, having kind of spent maybe 30-40 minutes with the rules so far. So things that, but you get the idea. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of improve your pilot. Now these are the theater tables, and one thing that I may have misled people on when I showed all of those theater pages, it's not likely that you're going to go to all of those. So depending upon which kind of squadron, or I'm not sure what the German word is for this here, but which squadron or flight group you're in, you're going to have a different career sequence in each game. So there's some replayability here. For example, if you're in this STG2, you're going to go to North Africa. If you're in 77, you're not. You're going to the Soviet Union early, and then you're going to be spending most of your career on the East Front. So again, you can kind of see here how you could play a career one way and then say, okay, I'm going to try this one now too, and get a bunch of different theaters and a lot of different gameplay. And here are this is more information on the theater tables. This is SGG1, so that one again is different than the other one. So lots of different things to kind of consider. There's so much in this. It's just a ton of stuff. It's just amazing. This again is that Sevastopol campaign table. That's again, I think it's one of the optional ones, and it looks like there's a lot of detail here, so it could be very, very interesting. And then more theater tables here too, in terms of some different options and kind of different places that you could end up in the war. Now, the last chunk of the player aid cards here. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Are all models of the Stuka. So the Stuka, of course, evolved over the course of the war. So you generally start out in Poland, I think, with the I want to say B1, this B2 Trop, maybe? I might be wrong on that, but one of these earlier models. But then as you go further, you're going to be assigned different Stuka for particular missions, or maybe a campaign, you're going to get an upgrade in Stuka. And so there are 18 different Stuka models, each one of these printed on both sides, for different elements in the game. And they're substantially different. I mean, it's not just like die roll modifiers, like the bomb loads you're going to be able to carry are different. The maneuverability is going to be different. The strength of the plane and its abilities, all these kinds of things are going to be subtly different with each one of these Stukas as you go through. And of course, they're all Stukas, but there's quite a bit of subtlety there to kind of, again, building out this idea that I feel like a lot of thought has been put into the game to make it not feel same. Because if you're going to have a campaign that's maybe 30 missions, 40 missions, maybe longer, the last thing you want to do is get up to mission 30. You're like, I've done this one 20 times. You have to kind of build in some creativity and some nuances to the missions there so it doesn't feel repetitive. And I feel like that's another way, in addition to kind of the different types of missions, the different campaigns and theaters, the different planes is another way they've thought through that process there. Now this, I think, is your mission management card. This would be essentially your map. So you're going to keep your plane, keep this plane card handy because you're going to be putting damage and stuff like that on it and taking the bombs off and things like that and marking lots of things with those counters on that there. And then beside that, you'll have here, which kind of gets us to this next part. This is where that pilot card's going to go. And it's very much a card-based game. You're going to have a lot of different decks that you're pulling cards from to determine how the mission goes. And we'll take a look at some of those cards here. But this is basically where they all go so that you can manage the different missions as you're going on them here. And this is, of course, one-sided because you're going to use it for every mission in the game. And this is small, 8.5 by 11 times 2, so with a, what's that, 17 by 11 perhaps? So a nice small footprint for the game to play on. Now we come to the cards. And there are 6 different kind of elements to take a look at. This one here, let's start first. These are unique munitions. And I think it's a particular die roll that you get. So if it's 1943, before your mission and you roll a 1 to 3, and I'll show these on the side here, then you can get this kind of cluster bomb, AB-250. And there's, I think, 3 of these printed on both sides, so 6 different of these kind of unique munitions that you could have assigned to your Stuka that perhaps give you a little bit more punching power than the regular munitions you might get. So really kind of another, again, a little subtlety, kind of, again, more thought into how to customize this game so that things are going to keep feeling like they're new and fresh and different as you play through it. Let's take a look here at the flight cards first. So the flight cards, basically, there are a ton of these, and I'll show some close-ups on the way. But basically, there's a generic deck, and I think it's 1 to 37, maybe, or 31 here. And that's kind of, they're going to be in every one, but then depending upon where you are, so if you're in Europe, you're going to be adding these into the deck. If you're in naval mission, you are going to be adding these into the deck and maybe pulling the Europe ones out. If you're in USSR, you're pulling these in here too. Oh, that's a different deck here. These are all mixed up, but we'll get through them. But you get the idea. There's a lot of different missions that are going to be. So as you're playing, depending upon what campaign you're in, these decks are going to dictate some of the differences and nuances in the flight as you're going to and from your target. And here's, of course, these are for kind of the night missions. And then if you start in China with that special China mission as well. So these cards here, and you can see that we have, approach, return to base, and mission start. So these are going to be kind of dictating what happens as you're heading to the target, on your way to the target and things like that, and on the way back and things. Then we have here, probably worth mentioning, the action cards. And I think the ones I pulled out here are action cards too. Yeah, as I flipped the box over at the beginning of the video, we had some turbulence, so the components of these cards got mixed up again too. These are your action cards, and so you pull basically a deck of these, and as your pilot, you can use these action cards at various points in your mission to increase your odds of success. And so these basically give you a kind of die roll modifiers as you're in the middle of the mission. And as you go further in your campaign, you can swap out, when you get more experience, you can swap out better cards for weaker cards, thereby increasing the skills of your pilot and the likelihood the pilot's going to survive. And some of them here apply in certain places. So this is like strafe 3 +1 to hit. So this gives you modifiers, bonuses if you're on a strafing mission as well. So lots of different kind of subtleties and ways that these, I think, can be used, ways that they've built them into the game. These look like a lot of fun. I love the artwork on them too. So a lot of stuff there in terms of the action cards, but there's more too. Altitude cards, I'll show a couple of these too. These dictate the weather and influence some of the modifiers and challenges to each different mission depending upon what kind of weather you draw. So you can be at different altitudes for the mission, and that's going to increase your chances of successful bombing or not, as the case may be. Poor visibility here. So lots of different ways that the weather is going to play a role, and these weather cards dictate those. And those are different for each theater too, depending upon the climate, I think, and the type of weather that was inherent in that campaign. These are the target cards. There are, I want to say, 41 of them. So 41 different types of targets you can go, and each one with kind of their own munition requirements and bomb requirements and modifiers for that. Victory points, whether there's anti-aircraft fire and other things that happen, infantry position, tanks, railway station. And some of them are cool. If we go down in here, we can see, I know there was a name ship, I think it was the King George. So we get the Victorious going on a carrier. This is another carrier, it must be a generic carrier. HMS King George V, so one of the missions could take you to that. So again, a lot of ways I think they've added a lot of flavor here, and you can, for me, I think this is one way that it feels like it's going to have it kind of elicit that narrative of your plane, your pilot's career over the course of it. So just a ton of variety in these different missions that you could get, and those are there. And then the last thing we have, almost there, almost home free, the objective cards. And so this basically is a smaller deck that you put into play as you're reaching your objective. And so you might have 3 cards in there and you build it up. They might say, okay, enemy defenses, searching, and then there's usually one in here. It's got to be here for target reached. And so you're going to pull these cards, and what you're hoping to get right away is the target reached, but if you don't, then you get enemy defenses and you have to interact with this card and see what happens to you. And generally these things are going to be bad, of course. Searching, stay in formation, or if you don't, you lose 1 stamina. And then finally you get the target reached, and that tells you, okay, now you can conduct your bombing run. So again, there is a procedural element to the game, and these cards are the things that are going to kind of help you walk through it. One of the things that I think that comes up with these games is the agency in the game. You see comments like this. I don't feel this way about them. I feel like there's enough agency, and to a certain degree, there is an element of fate with this type of career game in warfare. So I've been fine with it too, but it is nice to see and feel that there's agency in a game. And I feel like there's, at least from looking through these cards and the action cards, a lot of the different ways you can manage your career, you're going to have a lot of interesting decisions, and I feel like there's a lot of agency woven into the pilot's career and into the way the game play. It feels like there's been an intentional effort to make this a game that you're going to play and not really have that kind of campaign on rails type of feel to it. But again, the test really comes in playing it out and giving it a shot. So there is this. Now I only have this for about 2 weeks or so. So I'm going to learn the game and then try to get 1 or maybe 2 missions up on the channel before I have to send it off to somebody else. So I'll be back. I'll put a link to that mission as soon as it's ready. So we'll get some gameplay of this up onto the channel shortly. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or any other things that you'd like to comment about the video. I love to read the comments. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.